Welcome back to the Agri SA Congress. My name is Neil de Klerk, and it's now a privilege for me to welcome Jolanda Andrag and Xhala to this part of the session. Jolanda is the head of the Commodities Chamber, and Mihlali is head of the Corporate Chamber. Welcome, Jolanda and Mihlali.
Thanks, Neil.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you, Neil?
Thank you.
Very well, thank you. Thank you for your time. It's going to be interesting in a very interesting time for agriculture in South Africa to talk to you guys, and I really look forward to some of the insight that you can share with the Congress. And to start with the easy question, what does the current structure of the two chambers and its respective members look like? If we can start with you, Jolanda.
So, Neil, currently the Commodity Chamber consists of 26 members covering the three subsectors: livestock, agronomy and horticulture. So basically, if you can eat it or drink it, you'll find it in the Commodity Chamber.
So, Neil, I'm looking after 59 corporate companies, which is basically the upstream and the downstream side of the agricultural value chain. It includes multinationals, listed companies, which range from insurance companies, banks, agribusinesses and co-ops in and around South Africa, Africa and the rest of the world.
Mihlali, how does the Corporate Chamber and the Commodities Chamber differ from each other?
I think with the Corporate Chamber, they are the new kid on the block. We actually established the Corporate Chamber in 2017. So a lot of the members are new to the primary agricultural side. I think the motivation for a lot of corporates in joining Agri SA was to become closer to the network and to also just forge that gap between primary agriculture and the other side of the value chain.
So in your opinion, what was your chamber's greatest achievements this year?
So I think my chamber's greatest achievement was purely supporting the farmers during this time. I think we started off the year with a bang. We had an embassy evening where over 50 countries were represented that night. And I think very shortly after that, we had COVID. A lot of the issues that corporate members had were to the benefit of farmers, and I think the Corporate Chamber informed a lot of policies and regulations, and we advised government in a very big way in terms of how they can better structure regulations and how they can better support primary agriculture and really support it while it was an essential service to the whole country and the rest of the world.
I must say, being with GWK, I can tell you that you guys did a good job this year by informing us through specifically the COVID-19 pandemic, and that really assisted the industry. So thank you for all the hard work. I would like to direct the same question to Jolanda in terms of the Commodities Chamber.
Neil, I think what Mihlali said, we started off the year with a dream to unlock synergies throughout the value chain, and the embassy evening was a start for us because it was the one place where we had the whole of the value chain together in front of 50 countries telling the story on behalf of agriculture to the world. And we wanted to set ourselves up for the year going forward and to set the tone by that evening. And circumstances, COVID actually forced it, because our greatest achievement this year, even across the spectrum of organized agriculture, was the way we reacted to our greatest challenge. And that was towards the end of March, especially April, and even in May. The whole of the value chain came together, and the camaraderie just to get issues resolved was absolutely amazing to experience. And I think it was an absolute privilege for both of us to work alongside the leaders of commodity organizations in picking up issues. I think at the start there was the non-essential grouping, the wine people, the barley farmers, the wildlife sector as a whole, as well as the wool and the cotton industries that was not declared essential at the start. And I had particular industries, and I can include the floral industry as part of that. And then on the other side, you had the guys that was essential, but had lots of ambiguous interpretations of legislations, running into logistical barriers. Obviously, the ports was a huge challenge, and in this time, we actually learned the importance of working the network in organized agriculture and building relationships, especially in state-owned enterprises like Transnet, with which we build a great relationship. So in terms of achievement, I think it was the way that we related to each other and how we gave identity as a value chain to how we can work together. And I think for agriculture as a whole, going forward, that's a good base we set in 2020, and it really makes me hopeful for what is to come.
To bring this into the current situation, what's the current focus of the Chamber?
So the current focus of the Chamber is 5 focus areas. Firstly, biosecurity. So Agri SA works alongside its members to play an advocacy role and a facilitating role on issues such as FMD, which was a big matter across the country at the start of 2020. And I think still we all trying to promote the importance of having capacity at the right places. Obviously, biosecurity matters is also an important matter for the exporters on the plant side and on the livestock side. So that's the first focus. The second focus is agricultural development. I think commodity organizations has an unbelievable track record in terms of developing rural South Africa over the past 2 decades. And it's something that we as a chamber are driving forward hard in collaboration with various other stakeholders such as the banks and policy initiatives on the government front. Then thirdly, we have a focus on trade. Agri SA plays a facilitating role alongside its members to align our lobbying efforts and to unlock that political will to work into a better trade regime where we have preferential trade agreements and just a better access to markets so that we can be globally competitive as we go along. Then fourthly, we focus on R&D. So what we're trying to do is to get alignment between academia and private industry in terms of priority, and just to get a feel of how we can best allocate the limited R&D resources that we have in this country. Parallel to that is obviously the importance of maintaining a good relationship with the Agricultural Research Council, the ARC, and that going forward, Agri SA will play an instrumental role in bringing all 3 parties, academia, the state and the private industry together to jointly take ownership of the need for R&D and the value for it in agriculture as a whole. Then lastly, we focus on value chain synergies. And by that we mean it's just forging relationships that's enabling. It's building trust among people to bring about change that's needed. And that, I think COVID has helped us a lot with that in bringing people together and in collaborating constructively towards a certain solution.
And I think it's interesting because of the variety of different areas of focus within the chamber must make it very interesting for you guys.
I think it is an unbelievably privilege that we have to see like a bird's eye view of so many industries on one day basically. And to see how each have their vulnerabilities, whether it's the logistical stuff, whether it's the animal health capacity issues, whether it's the market access stuff, which is it's actually a crisis in terms of the horticulture space and unlocking new markets and keeping us competitive. So it's a dynamic space, and it's a space that I believe is best positioned to take agriculture as a whole forward.
So Mihlali, for the new kid on the block, what's the corporate chamber's current focus?
So earlier this year in February, the corporate chamber sat together and we developed a strategy going forward. And our focus areas were very similar to those of the commodity organizations. I think a big part that corporates wanted Agri SA to play a role in was the lobbying efforts. So I was focusing on policy matters such as land reform, such as Act 36 of 1947, which would basically ensure that the corporate companies within Agri SA remain competitive and remain innovative. Another focus area for us was R&D, similar to the Commodity Chamber, and I think we have a lot of the universities sitting in the corporate chamber, so it was very good to actually integrate their efforts together with commodity organizations and try and pull in some of the corporates and multinationals that are already investing in R&D and forge collaboration between existing members. Another focus area for us is market access. So corporate members are also participating in the trade facilitation program that Agri SA is running. Market access for corporate companies, I think, is massive. It's the only way for companies to grow. So I think our focus on trade has been critical to how our companies transcend a time like COVID-19. So I think these value chain synergies that we forged for our corporate companies have been critical for our members. So transformation and enterprise development is a big one for corporate companies. I think we've invested in enterprise development and supplier development over the years. And I think it's such a great opportunity for corporates to tap into what the services that commodity organizations already offer when it comes to development. So we've seen a lot of banks and other corporate companies partnering with commodity organizations or government to really drive sustainable enterprise and supply development within the agricultural space.
Mihlali, you mentioned COVID-19. How did that affect the landscape that you operate in and your members?
Sure. I think COVID-19 really made a lot of our members look inwards and just relook at the way we currently operate as an industry. We forged a lot of relationships with the rest of the value chain because we realized the dependency of each part of the value chain in ensuring the success of another member. I think what corporates are also on the lookout for is what the trends will look like for various commodities such as the wine industry. What is the impact of COVID going to have on the rest of the horticulture industry or barley farmers because alcohol was closed for so many weeks? So in terms of consumer patterns, I think a lot of the corporates are monitoring that. It's going to affect a lot of businesses, what you sell in your shop at Xhala. So we're going to look at consumer demand, or what the buying power of consumers is, and also just emphasizing the importance of traceability, which is what the livestock industry has been really focusing on. I think the consumer is more aware of what they're consuming, and corporates are aware of that, and retailers want to provide what's good for the consumers, and cooperatives and businesses want to provide what will really make the farmer competitive and able to compete at a global scale.
Jolanda, I would like to bring you back into the conversation. The same question, but also if you can include what lessons you learned during the pandemic.
So Neil, the COVID story in South Africa actually started in February already, where some of our members who was exporting, especially the table grapes going into Southeast Asia and China at the time, experienced difficulties in the ports over there. And at that time, members increasingly were concerned about the blockages in European countries as well. And then leading into March, we saw how the logistical vulnerabilities between the links in the value chain started crumbling away, and the vulnerabilities of ports especially was completely exposed. So then moving into April, as we were going into level 5, there was the non-essential grouping that I mentioned earlier and the essential grouping, and obviously they were affected in completely different ways. Just the impact on the wine industry has been massive over the past few months, as well as on the barley industry and the sustainability of barley production going forward in our country. Then thinking of the tobacco farmers, you know, the tobacco industry is globally such a respected industry, and when you think of it, you think of multinational companies, but I think at times we forget that this is an integral part of agriculture as well. Then obviously the other side was the game farmers, which had a bit of a double whammy. On the one side, they couldn't take in tourists, which is a big part of their income, and then the hunting, which at the time was not allowed. And as we progressed and more sectors were acknowledged as essential and were allowed to operate, things started changing. But the liquidity challenges, especially in the wine industry, and the prolonged impact of the storage capacity of wine that built up over the last few months due to the ban on alcohol sales, is something that we're going to struggle with for some months to come. So I think if you ask me what did I learn, the importance of acknowledging interdependencies. We saw the alcohol people working together as a grouping. And the same was true in the tobacco industry. The same was true in the game industry. People really came together and said, well, if my part of the value chain is not working, yours is not. And I believe it's that spirit that will drive us forward in agriculture.
Mihlali, as I said, I've been on the receiving end for some of the great work that you guys have been doing in the corporate chamber. What lessons have you learned during COVID-19?
Just to touch on what Jolanda said, Neil, and I think it's very important, is that as a sector, we're going to become more and more interdependent as time goes on. And the corporate chamber, I think, felt closer to the primary agricultural family during this time. And the lessons I learned is that there's a need for vulnerability in our industry, and there's a need for communication and open communication. And I think as an organization, we did very well in communicating with our members and making them understand the struggles and the challenges of farmers and industry, and really having everybody's buy-in when it came to our lobbying efforts. I think our lobbying efforts wouldn't have been as successful as they were if we didn't have the backing of the entire value chain and various external stakeholders as well. So I think for me, the greatest lesson I've learned during this time is that communication is key, and without having an inclusive value chain, we won't be able to achieve what we put our minds to. And I think we've done very well during this time. We're very sympathetic to the industries that were closed during level 5 and level 4. And that's the kind of energy we want in the sector. We want each other to have each other's backs. We need to support each other in all the endeavors that we do, and really monitor what markets will look like and market opportunities will look like for the rest of the value chain. I think if we don't support each other in those endeavors and knock on the same doors, our efforts will be in vain.
Jolanda, Mihlali mentioned risk, and the whole risk landscape in agriculture changed over the last few months. What are the bigger risks at the moment that you guys identify and work on?
So Neil, I think firstly, besides COVID and the stuff that unfolded around the COVID narrative, that we should not lose focus of the fact that climate change is still a big issue in our country. We see production patterns changing in our country. We see the persisting drought, especially the Klein Karoo and in parts of the Northern Cape. So in all of this, I think that remains one of the key risks. Secondly, I think we need to sort out the animal health crisis in our country. We need to capacitate the right kind of people and form private-public partnerships that's geared towards actually addressing the issues. Then thirdly, I think we need to unlock new markets. It's key for the sustainability of all our horticulture sectors, as well as on the livestock side. We need to collectively strengthen our efforts on a global scale of how we trade. Then I think another thing is we need to find a balance between protecting our industry and growing it. That dualism, I think, on the one side has the ability to divide us, but I also believe it's something that can drive us forward and bring us together if we constructively collaborate. So that being said, I think the last thing that's a key risk to me is bringing in young people. We really need to start handing over the stick to the next generation. We need to start building capacity on a skills level, and we need to bring in a diverse group of people that can take this industry forward.
Speaking of young people, Jolanda, you both are quite young and part of the new emerging leadership in agriculture, with both very important roles working with two chambers that really have a big influence on agriculture in South Africa and the future of agriculture in South Africa. Jolanda, what's your view on the future of organised agriculture?
Neil, I believe that the future of organised agriculture will be to define the relationship between the various value chain components correctly and constructively, and then also to actually make a concerted effort to work across the spectrum of organised agriculture together. I believe our relationships will improve thematically. And over time, I believe, we might be divided in structure, but at least the people across these structures can come together and work together on solutions. So I believe organised agriculture is best positioned to drive development in this country in close collaboration with government. And it will always be an important link between the private sector and government. And so it should be. I think what is important to remember is that agriculture in our country was built on the back of a network. And organised agriculture is the formalization of that network. Organised agriculture developed agriculture to where it is today in terms of setting the standards, opening up the markets, doing the extension services, doing the hard yards on development. And going forward with the help of government, I believe we can really make a difference in this country.
Mihlali, building on that, what excites you about the environment?
Neil, I think we started off such a difficult time and an unusual time. On a great note, as a sector, we communicated in ways that we've never communicated as a value chain, and I think we can only build from that. And what really makes me excited about where agriculture is going is the amount of new young people entering the sector. I think a few years ago we always used to say, let's make agriculture sexy again. It's definitely sexy now. So it's a matter of really upskilling young people and really, as Jolanda said earlier, just handing on the baton to younger people. I think how we respond to risk will definitely determine the future of agriculture and how it flourishes in comparison to the rest of the world. I think South Africa is well positioned to do better and to really explore new markets. So I think the future is really exciting. I've so much faith in our farmers. I think they've proven to be resilient during this time, and our members have proven to be resilient as well. So it's only upwards from here.
Jolanda, julle het 'n hele klomp verskillende organisasies wat julle verteenwoordig en sien dalk baie keer landbou op 'n ander manier uit verskillende hoeke uit. Wat is die rol van landbou in Suid-Afrika?
Neil, ek dink dit het 'n dubbele rol. Aan die een kant het ons 'n ongelooflike groot verantwoordelikheid om voedselsekerheid te verseker, om bekostigbare voedsel te produseer en seker te maak dat dit toeganklik is vir almal. En aan die ander kant dink ek ons as industrie het 'n ongelooflike rol om inhoud te gee aan hoe ons in verhouding tot mekaar staan in Suid-Afrika en om brûe te bou op 'n diverse vlak. Ek dink die een ding wat ons moet besef is dat die Suid-Afrikaanse landbou is 'n in Engels is 'n microcosm van die groter realiteit van Suid-Afrika. Ons het nie een uitdaging in Suid-Afrika wat nie uitspeel in landbou nie. En daar's soveel sistemiese uitdagings wat gaan tyd neem om te oorkom, maar ek dink die toewyding waarmee ons huidige leiers hierdie uitdagings aanpak is wat my opgemonde maak en hoopvol hou op 'n toekoms waar ons 'n nuwe inhoud kan gee aan wat Suid-Afrikanerskap is binne in die landbou narratief.
So, Mihlali and Jolanda, this is the final question, but this is the difficult one. I think you both are in a privileged position where you get to interact with the leaders in different organizations in agriculture and other businesses in South Africa. And how would you define the future of leadership in agriculture?
So Neil, for me, I think the future leader in agriculture will be agile. I think during this time, agile leaders were the ones who really overcome this time. And another thing is that how we respond to risk will definitely determine the kind of leaders that are available for agriculture in the future. Innovation is key, and I think unlocking market opportunities will be the kind of leaders we want. I also see room for new leaders, as we said earlier. I think agriculture is already going there. So yeah, I'm very hopeful for where we're going as a sector, and I think leaders who continue to serve the farmer and are concerned with really harnessing sustainable agriculture and food security, not just for South Africa, but the rest of the world, will be the leaders that thrive. So,
Jolanda, is there something you would like to add to that?
Neil, I think that the future of leadership in agriculture is people that can show humility and empathetically listen to all the sides. And it's certainly people that value diversity and is able to exploit it. I do not believe that there's someone going to show up and have all the solutions to our problems, but I believe that we are going to inspire leadership that's visionary and people that can ask the right questions and bring the right people together to capacitate certain institutions and lacking areas and drive the sector forward.
Jolanda and Mihlali, I would really like to thank you. Two things that I picked up from the conversation is, the first is obviously the passion you both have for what you do and the effort you put into the work and how important it is to you. And then the one thing from our conversations that stand out is that the work you are doing with the leaders involved in the chambers are moving past preaching partnership and going into constructively collaborating in the industry. And it's making such a big difference. So thank you for that and all the hard work, and thank you for taking part in this conversation as well. And I would also like to extend a word of thanks to the members of these two chambers who obviously support with the important work that they are doing. Please don't go anywhere. There's still lots of important subjects that's going to be discussed during the Agri SA Congress.